When a foodie gets to be my age, we get to take a step back and reflect on how food has changed over the decades. For me, the 1980s and the 1990s were some of my favorite in recent history. New chefs, as well as seasoned chefs, were thinking out of the box. They weren't cooking from them. So, fasten your seatbelts and strap your bicycle helmets on, kiddies, because today, this grandma is going to show you just how easy cooking an elegant meal from scratch, fit for a king, can be. Let's get started. Oscar was a dish invented for King Oscar of Norway and Sweden back in the 19th century. His chef made him a dish consisting of all of his favorite things: veal, asparagus, crab meat, and hollandaise sauce. The king loved it so much, he named it Veal Oscar. In the 1980s and 1990s, American chefs started preparing the dish, substituting chicken for the veal and Bearnaise for the hollandaise, because our American markets were being flooded with boneless, skinless chicken breasts. My favorite way to prepare Oscar is using chicken tenders. They don't call them tender for nothing. They're really juicy, moist, and tender. I've placed 8 of them between 2 sheets of plastic wrap, and I'm going to use a flat-sided meat mallet, not one of these jagged tooth gadgets, to pound these things to a nice even 1/4 inch thickness. Now in French, to pound means paillard. So what I am doing is paillarding chicken breasts, and the end result is I have 8 paillards, which is the noun for thin pieces of meat, seafood, or poultry that are going to cook up really fast in the skillet. And I'm going to remove my top layer of plastic. And I'm going to lightly season all these tops with some flour. I use Wondra. I like granulated flour, but feel free to just use regular all-purpose. And a really nice but light seasoning of salt. I'm using sea salt. And the same, a fresh grinding of pepper. And you can use plain black pepper. I like to use a peppercorn blend. Now I'm just going to set these aside for about 5 minutes to let the flour absorb any excess moisture from the tops of the chicken. And while these are resting, we're going to make blender Bearnaise sauce. If the thought of making hollandaise sauce from scratch strikes fear in your heart, relax. My easy, foolproof blender or food processor method couldn't be easier. I'm going to start by putting 3 egg yolks in the bottom of a small food processor. I'm adding 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, an 1/8 teaspoon of salt, cayenne pepper, and nutmeg. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this noisy little machine on and let it run full power for 2 full minutes. This is going to take the place of the whisking that we would normally do on top of a double boiler on the stove top. It's going to incorporate air and it's going to start to thicken and warm the egg yolks. And while this machine is running for 2 minutes, I'm going to pop over the microwave and melt a stick of butter. That's been 2 minutes, and as you can see, or I'm going to show you, we've got a nice, lightly colored, lightly thickened egg yolk mixture. Now, the next thing you need to know is the only difference between making hollandaise and making Bearnaise sauce is, to make Bearnaise sauce, you're going to add some shallot, and I'm using a tablespoon of finely minced shallot. So I'm going to add that right to the mixture. And the addition of tarragon, so I'm going to add a tablespoon of that to the mixture. Now when I turn this noisy little machine back on, I'm going to start adding the butter in dribs and drabs, not even a thin stream, because if we were whisking on the stovetop, we would have to constantly whisk and add the butter very slowly so that it emulsifies. And this could take up to a minute or two, so let's just start that process right now. Took us about a minute and a half, almost 2 minutes. And what I have, I'm going to remove my little blender blade. Is a cup of some of the most divine blender Bearnaise sauce you are ever going to taste. I've melted 4 tablespoons of butter into 4 tablespoons of olive oil in my electric skillet. And I love to use my electric skillet for this because I can cook all 8 servings or all 8 paillards at the same time. So I'm just going to pick up my seasoned paillards and I'm going to put them in the skillet, seasoned sides down. We'll get these sizzling as soon as I get them all into the pan and seasoned. Now I'm going to season the tops, the new tops of these with another little dose of flour. And a rerun of the sea salt. And the peppercorn blend. Now these are just going to lightly saute. We don't want them really, really golden brown. We just want them beginning to turn brown. That's going to take about 2.5 to 3 minutes per side. And this is another reason why I really like using the electric skillet, because I can control the heat underneath all of these evenly throughout the entire process. These have cooked for about 2.5 minutes per side, and they're just the way I described them, really lightly browned, starting to brown, really nice and tender. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push all of my paillards up to one side of the skillet. And when I do that, I'm going to put the traditional ingredients in here. I've got 24 asparagus spears that I steamed. They're fresh. There are people who use frozen asparagus, but we're scratch cooking today. And I'm just going to add these to the skillet. And I've got a pound of lump crab meat, and I'm going to add that to the skillet. Now I'm not going to stir these things or make any attempt to disturb the crab meat or anything like that. I'm just going to put the lid on this, and I'm going to let the chicken rest for 3 minutes and the asparagus and the crab meat to warm up during the same 3 minutes. Oscar is a dish that is classically served just warm. It's not served steaming hot. So in 3 minutes, we're going to plate this, and it's time to eat. This retro meal really is easy, elegant, and fit for a king. More importantly, it's made from scratch using high-quality ingredients. If you were in a restaurant, you could expect to dish out $20 to $25 for each one of these servings. At home, I did the math, $5 to $6 per serving. That's a small price to pay for such an exquisite feast. For these and all of my recipes, just go to my website.